afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Nova 401k Associates presentation on protecting your participants' information. This will be presented today by Jason Werth. He is a team leader for Nova. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please type them in the questions box, and Jason will be answering all those at the end of the presentation. A recording of today's presentation will be made available on our YouTube channel within 1 week. Our YouTube channel also has several other presentations available. So if you're ever interested, go to youtube.com, search Nova 401k Associates, and you can find our channel. Jason, we are ready to go.
Thank you, Andrea. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for taking your time out of a busy Thursday, beginning of the year. I'm sure a lot of you have a lot of plan administrator type responsibilities that you're working on, getting W-2s done, and all the various and sundry fun stuff that happens as a new year starts. But we got a quick webinar today, taking 30 minutes to talk about protecting your participants' information. And a lot of the concepts that we're talking about here in this webinar can apply beyond just your 401k plan. So, if you have medical plans or ancillary benefits of any kind, like all of these types of things that we're going to be talking about today can readily apply to those areas as well. So we're going to be talking about increasing attacks on 401k plans. What is personally identifiable information so we can know what we're trying to protect to make sure we're protecting it effectively? How does Nova help you keep that PII secure? And then what can you do when you're not interacting just with Nova to keep the PII secure? A couple of quick do's and don'ts of data security, and then we'll be dealing with any questions that you guys have throughout the webinar. I do talk a little bit fast, but I will repeat some items. And if you do submit a question, all the slides are numbered. So if you could put the slide number on it, since we're holding questions till the end, it'll make it easier for me to scroll back to the appropriate slide to have that up as I'm answering your questions. Okay, so let's dig in. In case you guys haven't noticed, 401k plans routinely get to be really high asset values, right? And there was the famous bank robber who said, when asked why he robs banks, he says that's where the money is, right? Well, we're getting to the point now where 401k plans hold trillions of dollars in assets across the United States. And so all of the people that are looking to do ill and looking to get a piece of that money, they see that big pot and they're like, oh, let's find ways to get at it, okay? And for most of your guys' 401k plans, you have a record keeper who is holding on to the plan assets. And so that's who these bad actors are attacking. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to pass themselves off as a plan participant or a plan sponsor to request that these record keepers give up funds in the plan. So it could be hacking an employee's email and then using that email, because that is often the user ID for many of these record keeper accounts, to try and get access. Then they kind of reset passwords and do other things. And then they log in and they try and request distributions. As technology has advanced, a lot of record keepers allow online distribution processing. So there is no physical signature or anything like that that's needed for a lot of these. Again, a lot of the things that are set up for participant convenience can also be used as a way to try and get money out of the plan in a fraudulent manner. If they are successful, most of the time what they're going to do is they're going to ask for an ACH or a wire, because that gives them the money the quickest. And if that is the case and they are able to fraudulently get a distribution out of the plan, those ACHs and wires typically get routed to another bank account almost immediately. And as a result, if there is found to be fraud or when the scheme is unmasked, there's rarely any money left to be recovered and put back into the plan. Now, as a plan sponsor, that is one of the things that your fidelity bond covers, is fraudulent attacks against your plan. Many record keepers also have cyber insurance. Nova 401k Associates, for example, has cyber insurance that can help to restore the plan if there is a problem. Okay, just to kind of give you an example of this, example is getting a little bit dated, but it's still a relevant one. 2016, Great West Financial, which is a record keeper out there, had 20 participant accounts process fraudulent withdrawals totaling over $1 million. Okay, so a couple of things to kind of dig into on this. Great West Financial is a big record keeper. They have millions of participant accounts. So the fact that only 20 of them had fraudulent distributions get processed is actually a pretty good rate, but it's not great if you're one of those 20 people that had your account balance drained, okay? The withdrawals total over $1 million, okay? If you do the math, 1 million divided by 20, that's still a pretty high account balance for each of these participants that were hurt. Generally speaking, the bad actors aren't going after your rank and file employees' account balances. They're going after your CEO, your CFO, your president. They're going after the people that are going to have the big money in the 401k plans. And what they also find is that a lot of times those people that have those big balances are very busy at work, and so maybe they're not paying as close attention as they could be to phishing attempts, or maybe have somebody helping them that might be a little loose with their financial information that can lead to these types of attacks. Once the bad actor gets the login information for a record keeper account, you can even get through multi-factor authentication. There are dozens of websites out there that can list everything from your first pet's name to your mother's maiden name. All that information is out there. People have it, just like they have your social security number. But the login credentials for these accounts is still what kind of keeps them safe, okay? Also, unrelated data breaches can expose your retirement accounts. I mean, how many of us use the same password or a variation of the same password for multiple accounts? I know I do, even though I've been told repeatedly that I shouldn't. And that's on my personal side. For my company accounts, I'm a little bit more diligent about that. But again, we keep getting told all these things that we need to diversify our passwords and all these things because, for example, if you have like if you're Equifax and you had a data breach and millions of people's social security numbers, addresses, and birth dates were all exposed, and you find out like those are all things that can be used as the multi-factor authentication piece. So if you have one password out there that maybe gets exposed in a hack, then if you're using that same password or a variation of it, then it is much easier for the people that are out to do no good to access your accounts. Okay, so let's talk about what is the information that we're trying to protect. The easiest one and the big one is the social security number, right? I mean, I just said that most people's social security numbers are out there on the dark web already, but that doesn't mean that we want to make it easy for people to come and get it. So we're definitely trying to protect social security numbers. We're trying to protect dates of birth. Employment history dates also matter. So if a person has a hire, a termination, and a rehire date, those things are protected pieces of information as well. Compensation information should be a no-brainer. We want to keep that safe and protected as much as possible. And then obviously logins and passwords to any secure site are things that we're not going to be sharing openly. Also, any non-public information about a plan or an employer. So for Nova, for example, we can't just give out a contract number to anybody who asks. We can't give out the bank information that we may have on file for you for paying our invoice. We can't even tell you who the authorized signers are if you're just somebody who calls us up. So we try to keep that information safe, again, because this information in the hands of people that are up to no good can cause problems for the plan, and we don't want to be a part of that. So what does Nova do to help you keep your retirement plan information secure? So we have a dedicated IT department that is constantly evaluating cyber threats, keeping up with the most current attacks and tactics that are out there, and making sure that our systems are up to snuff. We have a secure web portal, plan sponsor link. If you haven't used it before, I cannot recommend highly enough that you get familiar with it. On there, it has a secure file exchange system that can pass attachments with personally identifiable information on it in a secure manner. Encryption software is a big deal. Everyone should have that on their email, but again, if they don't, the secure web portal at Plan Sponsor Link is a good tool to use instead. We also have as a policy here at NOVA that any new plan contacts have to be authorized by an existing contact before we can add them. So we can't have somebody call up and say, hey, I'm Joe, I work for the existing trustee on the plan. He said that I need to be added as a contact on the plan. That's not good enough. We need the trustee on the plan to contact us to say, hey, Joe is actually somebody that we want to have access to plan information. You'd actually be surprised how many times we have to do that because people just assume they can call us and get added on an account. NOVA has a standardized password policy, which is every 90 days we have to update our passwords to any secure information. We also are required to enable two-factor authentication on every account that provides it for us. So, for example, like if you have a plan with Empower or with Voya, they have two-factor authentication in order to access those websites, but you can turn it off if you choose to. NOVA's policy is that we are required to keep that on in order to safeguard our login information. NOVA also does mandatory cybersecurity training every quarter. And that is in addition to all those IT clickbait phishing attacks and some of those other things that we use to train our folks and keep them aware and wary of the types of things that the people looking to steal account information are trying to do these days. All right, so beyond NOVA, how can you as a plan sponsor or a financial advisor or somebody who provides services to the plan keep that personal identifiable information secure? The first thing is you gotta know what you're trying to secure. So look around at what you're emailing around, look around at where you're saving things and what you're saving. So distribution requests have personally identifiable information on them. It's a requirement. Loan requests have that. We're in January now, so people are starting to put together year-end census files and W-2 forms. Those have tons of personally identifiable information in them, which is why for the census file, we require you to upload it through Plan Sponsor Link. Again, because that's a secure transmission method. You're probably starting to get some participant statements for your fourth quarter balances. Those often have personally identifiable information on them. It's a little early yet, but soon, for those of you who are partnerships or sole proprietorships, you'll be getting your K-1s and your Schedule C information. That is, individual tax return information, which is loaded with personally identifiable information. So just remember that when you're sending these types of documents around, email is not a secure transmission method. There are secured emails and things like that that can help, but again, your best way to do that is going to be using a secure file transfer portal like NOVA has and like many of our record keeper partner has as well. Okay, a question that I get often is what about password protection on a document? So I've got a spreadsheet with all my census information. I put a password on it and I send it off to via regular unencrypted email because that password is going to last. We actually had someone from our IT department do a little demonstration on this, and he broke I think it was an 8 or 9 digit password protected Excel file. He broke the password on it in under 10 seconds. Just because Excel, for example, if you set the password, there is no lockout after a certain number of failed attempts or anything. So they can just brute force go through and try password combination after password combination until they eventually find it. And computers are so fast these days that for those type of things, it is a breeze to break those accounts. So, I mean, it's better than nothing, but it's not much better than nothing at this point. Also, when you're sending out emails that have any of these documents attached or personally identifiable information in them, be wary of who you're copying on that email. Does that person have access to that? Should they have access to it? Even if they're allowed to see that information, does it make sense for them to get it, in this format and in this time? How many of us get carbon copied on emails that We don't really need to be, right? So especially if you're sending personally identifiable information, be cautious about who you're sending that out to. You never know whose email account has been compromised. So one way to avoid that is to limit the number of people who are getting that to just the people who actually need it. Using complex passwords and changing them often. I mean, there's a reason that Nova requires us to change our password every 90 days, is because a changing password is a harder to crack password. And it also means that if my passwords get stolen and are posted on the dark web somewhere, it is unlikely that those are still going to be good passwords by the time that somebody buys them and tries to use them for a login, because I'll have been required to change my password since then. Also, I'm going to have a little graphic here to show you about complex passwords and what that means, but changing them often is a good way to safeguard yourself. And then consider encryption software. Nova, for example, has email encryption that scans our outgoing email, and anything that has what it considers potentially personal identifiable information, it encrypts that email automatically for us. It's kind of our last ditch effort to prevent PII from going out accidentally. Okay. All right, so here's the graphic I was telling you about. This comes from security.org, and it's just a nice little visual display of how easy it is to break a password, right? So if somebody is trying to use a computer to crack your password, you have to be at least 8 characters for it to take more than a day for a hacker to crack your password, okay? Now, the part that I like is as you get to the number of characters increases, obviously we get more and more into the green, right? I'm a big fan of using one uppercase, one lowercase, a number and a symbol in all of my passwords. So as many places that will accept those types of characters in a password, I use it. I'm usually in the 10 to 12 character range for my passwords. And again, that kind of puts me into the green. But think about where you might be on some of your accounts that you use for work or personal life, and how easy it would be based on this chart for someone to access those. Now, even if you're in the yellow or the orange area, right, you might be okay. I mean, most people that are hacking passwords, they would much rather deal with one that's instant than one that takes them 7 months to crack, right? So, so it is generally a deterrent when you have something like that. But no password is uncrackable. I mean, if somebody had 34,000 years, they could do that one on the bottom right. But again, if I'm a hacker, I'm going to see that, oh, that's 34,000 years for me to try and fix that. I'm going to look for somebody that has a 6-digit password instead, or a 6-character password. Okay. So again, sometimes people respond better to the visual. I know I do, so I wanted to make sure that this was out there for people to see. Okay, just a couple of tips and tricks, things that people have tried with us, things that we've seen at Nova that we want to make people and spread the word on. In Excel, because we do a lot with Excel with census files and things like that, hiding columns or tabs in a file does not secure the data. Okay, it is very easy for someone to see that your columns go from A to D, right, and then just hit unhide. Okay, so while you may think you're clever when you do that, it's not very effective at securing data. Using the masked social security number format in Excel does not secure the data either, because that full social security number is in there. All you got to do is change the number formatting, and it will come back to the full 9 digits. Okay, so again, just because of what you see doesn't mean that somebody isn't clever enough to undo what you've done. Okay. If you do use password protection in an email file and you send it, don't send the password in another email, okay? Because if the person that you're sending to has a compromised email, it doesn't matter if you send the password in a separate email, because it's still going to be compromised, okay? It is better to call the person that you're sending that file to with the password instead of sending it via email, okay? Generally speaking, do not email your username or password for any secure website to anybody. Okay. Not only is it bad policy to share your login information with someone else, but it is also more likely that, again, if the email is compromised, then your login information is out there, okay? Hopefully we've gotten a lot of exposure to these through various cybersecurity trainings, but when you are getting emails that have attachments, be very cautious about what you're opening, okay? The first thing is, are you expecting an attachment from this person? Are you expecting an email from this person that matches the subject line and what the email itself says? But especially emails with extensions like .dat, .exe, those types of emails are highly likely to be fraudulent attempts, okay? The .exe especially, the .dat file, those are putting files onto your system that could open backdoors and other ways for people to get into your system and do things that they shouldn't be doing. Okay, so be very, very cautious with attachments. If you do open an attachment that you, like as soon as you open it, your heart sinks because you kind of know that, ooh, that's not good, contact your IT person immediately. Timing makes a huge difference when it comes to these things as far as mitigating the damage if there is a problem. Okay, one other thing is consider archiving email accounts at your company. Nova, for example, has a 90-day email retention period. After that, our email is archived and taken off of our email server. We do that because if our email is hacked for some reason, we want to limit the damage as far as what people can find in our email box. So like some Nova employees have been around for 20 years because Nova just celebrated our 20th anniversary last year. So they had, at one point, they had their entire email history in their email box. So if their box had been hacked, every email that they'd ever written, received, or saved was out there for someone to find. And over a 20-year period, somebody's going to slip up about sending personally identifiable information in via email, right? It's just, I mean, it just happens. So to protect ourselves from something like that, we limit the emails that are saved to just 90 days. And what that does is if someone does compromise our account, then they can only see our last 3 months, and it is much less likely that we've had somebody slip up and send personally identifiable information in the last 3 months, okay? I mentioned this earlier, but just to reiterate, do not share your logins and passwords among multiple people. Every person who accesses a secure account should have their own login and password for the access point. It is much easier to trace if there's a problem, who the source of that problem is. But if you have multiple people sharing the same login, especially when you have things like employee turnover, right? That person probably still remembers what that user ID and password was that everybody uses to get into that account. And it makes it much more likely that something bad could happen in those types of situations. It's better to have that former employee that had a specific login and password for their account, and then as soon as they're terminated, you can shut down that access and they have no way to get into those accounts any longer, okay? All right, I've been talking fast, but we got about 6 minutes left. Andrea, have any questions been submitted so far?
No, we have not received any questions.
Awesome. That means that I did a spectacular job of explaining everything around data security.
We did receive one just now.
Oh, great.
I spoke too soon. Give me 1 second. Let me send this out here. Okay, the question, I need to be secure. I received an email from an engineering firm working for Los Angeles Community College District. This file was building drawings being sent to us. The last file on the download link was, in quotations, desktop. I opened it and it had 19,000 files from my computer, employee information, and all. It went to all my competitors. I then called in the engineering firm. They had no idea how this could happen. I then spent days on the phone with Apple, Microsoft. No one knew how this could possibly happen. I have Avid of it on my cell. It happened. I'm now afraid to join this 401k plan. Who can I call to make sure I'm secure?
Yeah, that's definitely a a crazy story, but what likely happened in that instance is that the engineering firm had their email, that person had their email hacked, and what happened is the hacker just set up a rule where every time they send an email, it does that attachment to it, and if someone clicks on that last attachment, then that's what happens. It sends the same email to every person on your contact list. You know, and it's just one of those things where one bad double click can really cause some trouble, and it also shows just how devious the hackers can be these days, right? I mean, that is a relatively innocent click. You know, the rest of the attachments on that email were probably legitimate. The email was from someone that you were expecting to receive something from. And it's just one of those, like, it's a very subtle, very insidious way to really cause havoc. The fact of the matter is there is no way to be 100% certain that the attachment that you're opening is going to be legitimate, but you can greatly minimize the risk of it by being vigilant and just looking at every attachment that you open before you double click on it. As far as being concerned about joining the 401k plan as a result, most times you're not going to get things via attachment any longer. A lot of times the record keepers, for example, will send you an email that maybe has a link to their website that takes you to their login page, which is less likely to be dangerous. The other thing with the website link is that you can hover over the link in the email, and that will kind of bring up in a little box below the actual website address, so you can make sure that it looks like the website that you want to go to. So for example, if you're trying to log into the Empower website and you hover over the link and it says XYZ .com or something, then you can say, oh, that's not what I'm expecting. I'm not going to click on that link. But again, to try and alleviate your concern, you're not going to get many attachments from your record keeper or from Nova. A lot of times what's going to happen is we're going to provide links that'll take you to a website, a secure place where you can download things. And once you get into a secure account, downloading things becomes much safer. I'm not sure that's going to fully assuage your fears, but that's the best I can do at this point.
We did get another question. We'll see if you can answer this, Jason. What does it mean to archive an email account?
Yeah, so
to ex-employees, or suggesting we should get a new email account periodically, which sounds like a pain.
Yeah, getting a new email account is definitely a pain. I would not recommend that. But what we do is we have a offsite server. You know, a lot of people have backup servers, and one of those servers that we have, we dedicate to storing emails. So so after 90 days, an email falls off of my inbox and gets moved to this server that is unrelated to Outlook, which is the email program that we use. And that email is stored there instead. So if I ever need to get something that's more than 90 days old, I can provide search parameters to my IT team, and they can go find that email for me. But it is not on my Outlook. So if my Outlook gets hacked, then that email wouldn't be available to the hacker. So I hope that provides enough detail on that to answer your question.
Another question that's probably going to come up more often, at least for Nova and our clients, Jason, when sending a census file to Nova, or anyone for that matter, can we X out all but the last 4 digits of a social security number, or no, do we always provide the entire number? And is faxing still a safe method of transferring sensitive information?
So short answer on the fax, yes, it is still a good method, secure method of transmitting information. However, if you're sending something like a census file, speaking from experience, I really dislike that, because then I actually end up having to type all that census information over again into Excel. So I would much prefer the upload feature through Plan Sponsor Link. The first question in that was asking about typing X's over the social security number. And unfortunately for that, we require the full social security number. And the reason for that is because how often do you have people that have the same name within your plan, especially if you have a company that has a few hundred employees, right? How many John Smiths or Jose Garcias or whatever else common names you can think of. You have 2 or 3 people with that same name. The social security number is the main thing that we use to separate them. And the record keeper is the same way. The record keeper is never going to accept a file that allocates money among people based on just their name. It's going to require the social security number in full to make that allocation. So what I would again recommend is using the secure file transfer portal through Nova's website or through your record keeper's website. If you're transmitting information, that is going to be your best way to get that information to them in full with the information that's needed to make it happen.
And we did receive a question on if these slides are available. Yes. On your GoToWebinar panel, there should be a handout option. If you click that and it'll open the handout dropdown, you should be able to download a PDF version of our slides used today to your local computer. And again, the recording of this will also be made available on our YouTube channel. Just go to Nova 401k Associate, and then we've got several videos from last year, and we upload all of our recordings there, usually within 1 week of the presentation. Another question that came in, are you allowed to have access to your emails on your phone?
That's an individual company policy. Nova does allow for me to have access to my emails on my cell phone. Personally, I don't access it unless I'm traveling. So I actually remove the work email app from my phone when I'm not traveling for work, just because I don't want to be tempted, but also because I don't like to work outside of my normal hours. So it's an individual company policy type of situation for that, but for Nova, at least we do allow it.
What is the required security policy for that?
I don't know exactly what that question is getting at, but like if you're requiring that you have a lock feature on your phone, or I know that for me, in order to access that email, we can't have it remember my login credentials, for example. So I have to type in my credentials every time I access that app.
All right, well, that is all the time we have for today. Again, if for any reason you were not able to access the handout in the GoToWebinar panel, you can always email us at webinars@nova401k.com, and I'd be more than happy to send that over to you. Or if you have questions on any of our webinars that we have available, if you go to our website, we do have a couple listed. We do not have our full year webinar lineup available yet, but we will send out emails as those are scheduled throughout the year. Jason, did you have any closing comments?
I did not. I hope this information was beneficial, and I appreciate the questions and the back and forth. That's always makes these a little bit more fun. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.